Let us begin with an important question. Why do some habits stay with us for years, while others disappear after only a few days? Many people assume the answer is motivation. They think successful habits come from feeling inspired, determined, or highly disciplined every day. But in real life, motivation rises and falls. Some days you feel ready. Other days you feel tired, distracted, or busy. That is why lasting habits usually do not depend on motivation alone. They depend on a system. A system is the structure that helps you repeat an action in a steady and reliable way. In this module, we will focus on how to build a mindfulness practice that can continue beyond this course and become part of your real life. Instead of asking, "How can I force myself to meditate?" we will ask, "How can I make meditation easy to begin and easy to repeat?" That shift is very important because a strong system supports you even on days when motivation is low. In this module, we will explore the basic building blocks of habits and how they can help you create a mindfulness practice that lasts. First, we will look at habit loops. A habit loop is the pattern that explains how habits begin and how they become automatic over time. Then we will study the three key parts of that loop: cue, routine, and reward. The cue is what reminds you to begin. The routine is the action itself, such as a short meditation. The reward is the positive result that helps your brain remember, "This is worth doing again." After that, we will discuss environment design. This means shaping your surroundings so that practicing mindfulness becomes easier and more natural. We will also talk about tiny habits, because small actions are often the most powerful starting point. By the end of this module, you will see that building a lifelong practice is not about doing something big. It is about doing something repeatable. Now let us look more closely at how every habit works. Every habit has three parts: a cue, a routine, and a reward. Understanding these three parts gives you a practical way to build meditation into your daily life. First, the cue. The cue is the signal that reminds you to begin. It answers the question, what will trigger this habit? Good cues are often things that already happen every day. For example, waking up in the morning, brushing your teeth, or sitting down at your study desk. These are useful because they are regular and predictable. If you connect meditation to something you already do, you do not have to rely on memory alone. Next comes the routine. The routine is the habit itself. In this case, it may be meditating for 5 minutes. Notice that this is short and manageable. That is intentional. A habit is easier to maintain when it feels realistic, especially during busy school days. Finally, there is the reward. The reward is what helps your brain recognize that the habit was valuable. It could be the calm feeling you notice afterward. It could be the satisfaction of checking off your tracker. It could even be something simple, like enjoying a cup of tea after your practice. The reward does not need to be dramatic. It just needs to create a positive connection. So, when you combine a reliable cue, a simple routine, and a meaningful reward, you create the foundation of a habit that can grow stronger over time. This slide shows the habit loop in a simple sequence: cue, routine, reward, repeat, and then habit. This is the process we just discussed, now shown as a cycle. First, something cues you to begin, then you do the routine. After that, you experience a reward. When this cycle repeats again and again, the action becomes easier, more familiar, and more automatic. That is how a habit forms. This is especially useful for mindfulness practice. At first, meditation may feel like something you have to remember and choose very carefully, but with repetition, it becomes part of your normal rhythm. Your brain begins to expect the practice after the cue appears. Over time, the habit requires less effort to start. So the goal is not perfection. The goal is repetition. Each time you go through the loop, you strengthen the pattern. This idea leads directly to the next principle, which is how to make that pattern easy enough to continue. Here is the golden rule for building a mindfulness habit. Make it small, simple, and consistent. Make it small. A short practice is better than an ambitious practice that you cannot maintain. Even 1 or 2 minutes of mindful breathing can be enough to keep the habit alive. Starting small helps reduce resistance. Make it simple. Do not create a routine that is complicated or hard to begin. If your practice needs too many steps, too much preparation, or the perfect mood, it becomes easier to skip. A simple practice is easier to repeat. Make it consistent. This may be the most important part. Doing a little every day or on a regular schedule builds stability. Consistency teaches your brain that this habit is part of your life. Over time, consistency creates trust in yourself. You begin to see that you can return to the practice again and again. As we move to the next slide, you will have a chance to apply this idea by choosing a cue from your own daily routine. Now it is time to pause and reflect. Choose one daily activity that could become your meditation cue. Think of something that already happens regularly in your day. It could be after waking up, after brushing your teeth, when you sit at your desk, after school, or before going to bed. The best cue is one that is already stable. In other words, it happens most days without much effort. Try to choose something simple and realistic, not something that changes all the time. Once you have chosen your cue, imagine attaching a short meditation practice to it. For example, after I sit at my desk, I will take 5 mindful breaths, or after brushing my teeth, I will meditate for 2 minutes. This small decision matters because it turns mindfulness from a vague intention into a clear plan. And clear plans are much easier to follow than general goals. The key takeaway from this module is simple: consistency beats intensity. In other words, it is better to practice in a small, steady way than to practice in a very intense way only once in a while. This idea connects everything we have covered. Lasting habits are built through systems, not just motivation. Habits grow through the loop of cue, routine, and reward, and the strongest practices are usually small, simple, and consistent. As you continue your mindfulness journey, remember that you do not need to do everything perfectly. You do not need long sessions every day. What matters most is returning to the practice regularly. A few mindful minutes, repeated over time, can create real change in your attention, your emotions, and your overall well-being. That is how a practice becomes part of your life, not through pressure, but through steady repetition.